Hello everyone, this is a Black Sword Guts Mutator Greyhealth build that I am showcasing here. This build is not really intended to be a mainstay DPS type of build. This is mainly about being in the front, hitting things non-stop, not caring about what's hitting you. I don't think that, like, issues with melee builds aside, they're not... You want to be surviving in melee, particularly because you're often going to be inside of teammates damaging mods and whatnot. So you need to be tanky, and that's what we're aiming to do. Damage can is isn't exactly secondary, but it's not our top priority, if that makes sense. Going straight into the build. Now this is pretty variable, not set in stone, but there are a few key pieces. And of course, this is very Berserk inspired with not only the sword, but we're using the Guts Mutator. This is largely because of Greyhealth builds. I've never really been too keen on them. I didn't see how they made a lot of sense, but with some recent pickups I found, I think this is pretty viable in Apocalypse. So we use the Guts Mutator, giving us a lot of melee critical chance, because we're not really going to reliably be getting weak spot hits with melee. Crit chances are way to increase our damage, and if we hit harder, we're going to be life stealing more and staying alive that way. So this weapon already has a great base critical chance with 15%. That goes up to 40% when Greyhealth is present, and our build is gonna make sure we always have Greyhealth present quite a bit, and our melee critical damage is going to be at least 25% higher because of this build, because the crew of the build and the most important item is this amulet, the Hangman's Noose. I believe this is a random drop found in Losam, so it can be a pain to farm. I recommend going through Boss Rush because you'll find so many items just playing that out. And this, it seems odd to have an amulet that effectively does nothing but enables other items, but believe me, it is worth it. So this will, as you see, my health is at 50%, so it's kind of like the restriction cord. However, I always will have 50% gray health, which is going to proc our other equipment. Mainly, Ring of the Damned. This will give us 20% all damage all the time, and another 5% crit chance. Then we combine that with Hardened Coil. This is, I believe, you find this in Yesha when you fight the dual aberration fight that's underground with the two root shooters. It's a tough fight, and honestly, they're really fun to fight with this build. But this is gonna always give us 15% damage reduction, which is very welcome. As for the other equipment, it really depends on what kind of difficulty you're playing and what you feel comfortable playing. I'm always going to advocate for the Rally Band. Converts Grey Health into health because you're always going to have Grey Health. You will always be healing for 10% max health, which is more like 20% of your total health because your max HP is capped. So you get a lot more effective HP proportional to your max health from this ring. And I believe this does stack with healing effectiveness. So it's very important that you have this if you want to be trading blows with enemies. And this ring, I'll go over it later because it's very good, but you may have trouble finding it. So we're of course going to go with Challenger because we want access to Juggernaut. This skills just gives you everything you want. Your secondary archetype is kind of your preference. I really like Warden because of the drone shield. Because if we're gonna be at very high damage reduction all the time. So having shield that goes above your half health, as it just gives you so much effective health in general. We're not really gonna be banking on that though because we're aiming to just take damage and sustain through heals, but it is nice. And of course, Warden has this awesome contingency utility perk. This will give you a shield for a good chunk of your max health. This is more like a 50% of your real max health heal. It only happens every 30 seconds, but honestly, that's fine. Everything else about Safeguard, Galvanize works really well. You get a lot of all damage from this build, so you can still use ranged weapons of your choice. If you want to do something thematic with surrounding like the Guts character, you could do something like the Trinity crossbow here. I always like the double barrel. It's just for quickly tapping enemies that are in close range. And to get that high damage reduction, I'm using the 3-piece of the Fader set. This is found in the Logistics Bridge mission. You'll have to do some searching for it. You go to the top rails and come back after you beat the main objective. Hang along the right, and there'll be some boxes you can shoot and follow them. You'll get this awesome set. It's heavy armor, offers very good armor to weight. I think maybe even better than Lido's does. And I can't have the heavy piece, but I want to use the Dendroid mask anyway because it's more reminiscent of like the Berserker armor in a way. And I think these pieces look really well together, and they do everything we want with this build. Lots of resistances for everything. It's just perfect. Now, if you wanted to deviate from Warden, because honestly we're not using these skills too much, it's nice having all damage, but we could do something else. Once you have this ring, the Disaster Converter, this will give you so much shield on a short cooldown. It's not exactly descriptive how this ring works if it has an internal cooldown like the Warden Contingency, but this does such an awesome job keeping you alive. Whenever it procs and you're low real health, you just lifesteal up to full with this, and you just stay in fights forever. It's really awesome. And if you're using this, it's kind of redundant with Contingency, so you could do something else, such as, let's say, Alchemist, so you can make use of Frenzy Dust for the melee speed, or Stone Mist for more damage reduction. You kind of go past the damage reduction cap with this, especially if you're using the Black Greatsword, which I'm going to talk about in a second. So we could do Alchemist plus Challenger then, and still be happy. And then we can get drugged up with concoction buffs instead, because this is honestly a very, very good prime perk. But talking about the weapon Black Greatsword now, it has a very cool moveset, and honestly, for a lot of our attacks, we're not going to be hitting people with the sword because we have our neutral attack is a pretty potent kick. And this thing actually has a deceptively large hitbox, but is pretty easy for hitting weak spots with this. I would generally recommend... It comes out faster than these swings, which can often miss. So when you're deciding whether to use charge attacks or regular attacks, you're honestly trying to think, how is the enemy positioned and will I miss them with the hitbox? Because you can often just like whiff these attacks very easily because of how the hitboxes work. So starting with a kick to line up and then swing is very effective. These overheads, they can be useful for actually hitting weak spots, but it's very easy to miss with them. The other non-sword attack is the sprinting attack, which is a shoulder check. It's hilarious. It's pretty good for hitting weak points as well, so I do love opening with this and then going into the rest of the combo. And of course, we have the neutral backdash charge attack, which can be charged for extra damage, and then you do these two heavy swings. Now, it's pretty unreliable against a moving target to hit with both, so you mainly want to use this to get something that's more at range. Targeting went to that for some reason. Or to like clear a hallway full of enemies. That's it's very good at. Now, the item description says it charging increases maximum damage by up to 350%. You could try to build around this, but I think you'll be disappointed because this isn't 350% of the base charged attack damage. It's of the base normal attack damage. It's kind of disappointing in that regard. So maybe you can try to make this work with some other mutator to just increase the damage of the charge attack. But one, it's going to be hard to hit, and second, it's not as much of a damage increase. This is more like double the damage of a normal charged attack, which is still good. But if we want to be just persisting in fights, we want to be life-stealing with Rally Band and just non-stop hitting anyway. And often, using up all of your stamina and being in the middle of a fight with no stamina is going to be very, very hard to fight through and dodge the heavier attacks that you don't want to tank. This is in Apocalypse anyway. If you're not playing Apocalypse and you just want to hit things for fun, there's lots of other rings you can use. Instead of Hardened Coil, I would still use this most of the time because it makes you very tanky. This puts our total damage reduction at 65.8%, which is easy to get to the cap of 80% if you are doing charge attacks, if you have the drone out for the extra 10%. I'm not using it here, of course, but you can very easily reach damage reduction cap. If you don't want to just be tank and you want to deal more damage, it's just easy to swap out. You can go for stuff involving critical damage is going to be great. So probability cord, probably even better than like straight melee damage. Akari Warband is still awesome. Like we're not really planning on dodging that much, but this is still a great ring overall. Um, you could honestly use this. I didn't think of using Burden of the Gambler before, but it's really hard to land weak spot hits. But this will gimp your ability to deal with ranged enemies with your other ranged weapons. Aside from that, we have Braided Thorns will be very, very good. And I think Fey Warrior Ring is here. Because most of our build is all damage instead of melee damage, this one is also just a very effective at increasing your damage. You could also go like Berserker's Crest, so you can swing faster and lifesteal more often. But we're not really focusing that much on melee stamina because we're just using normal attacks. You could use Dying Ember, but this is just way inferior to Rally Band, and having both at the same time is not really needed. This one's very good as well, Brawler's Pride. And if you're against a boss, where because your swings are slow, the sealed resin loop can be nice if of getting out of these long melee animations and avoiding damage that way. So keep these in mind. You could do like, of course, like if you're thinking about like a Berserk inspired build, why not Whispering Marble? But honestly, we have already the Greyhealth synergy that's very effective, and I feel like Bulwark doesn't give enough most of the time unless you all in on Bulwark, and then you're missing out on the lifesteal, the crit chance. You could probably make this work, and you can fiddle with this a lot, but I've been wanting to make a Greyhealth build work for so long, and this one feels very, very tanky. It's this this ring is crazy for keeping you alive. Like it's very hard to actually get dropped. It gives you so much effective HP when it procs. As for traits, we'll always want Fortify so that we get the most out of our heavy armor. I'm not using Warden right now. I have Alchemist, but it doesn't change too much. We're going to go Triage, so we'll be healing more from... I'm not exactly sure if this stacks with Lifesteal, but still, if anyone's sending heals your way, you'll just be more of a monster, unable to die. Man is literally too angry to die. Strong back. This is pretty important because the Black Greatsword imposes a encumbrance penalty on you, a 15, so you may as well counteract that so you can still wear heavy armor. You would want Vigor and Endurance at max, so I would have to fiddle with this. We don't really care about Spirit or Expertise. Spark Skin, of course, important. If you're playing in co-op, of course, Survivalist. We definitely want Recovery, because melee without stamina is very sad. Fitness, this is just a personal preference of mine. Siphoner for more lifesteal, and we could fiddle with this more. If you were playing Warden, we would have this barrier. Swiftness could be cool. I haven't really messed with any mods that really enable you in this build, but you could opt for melee mod generation if you wanted. We don't really need Dark Pact because all of our damage received is going to Greyhealth anyway. So like the Greyhealth builds suffer because they are conditional on you setting up and maintaining Greyhealth, but this one you don't need to worry about it because you will always have plenty, and yeah, we don't need to worry about any other kind of traits that benefit this. I've been very curious about Perception. I don't know how potent it is, but I could probably see this being cool in some builds. Untouchable would probably also be good if you didn't want Revivalist. And of course, I would almost always have Kinship on if you're playing in co-op, because you're going to be eating hits and damage from your allies, and it's important that you'll be able to survive that. So definitely keep kinship. This is like the most important trait if you're playing melee and you're not like using the laser beam from the dark matter gauntlets and staying at range. If you're pure melee and you're in an enemy's face, you need kinship no matter what. And I think that's about it for this build. Let me know if you have any questions or ways to refine it. I would love to hear your thoughts on builds. I'm putting together a melee prism now. Been unlucky with getting this to fuse properly, but I imagine this will make the build that much stronger. Have a great day.